into Mr. Black, the athletic director, I've asked him to make sure the football game would be scheduled maybe away, so that, you know, if there were any problems or scheduling issues, we'd have a little bit of a cushion there.
Where would the team practice? Would they start over summer?
They have fields behind.
Okay.
The tentative end date is August 16th, and of course I have highlighted they're all construction schedules, so if there's something to change. But usually I think the football team starts practicing in that first week of August. And the actual construction schedule is also attached there, along with a couple of cut sheets for the lighting. There's a rendering of the light poles. And on the very back is a cut sheet from the visitors bleachers. The type of visitors bleachers that we're proposing is a 500-seat unit, and it's an aluminum truss system underneath. That's what supports it, and they'll be laid on a concrete pad.
In the future, are these expandable, or do we have to rip it out and start all over?
If you wanted a bigger visitors bleacher,
If you want to add more.
that's a good question. And I have seen these units similar to this, where they just, you know, place another one right next to it. And they would just, you know, fasten them together somehow. Now, because the lighting portion of the project, you know, is quite extensive, I attached the report that I got on the condition of the existing light poles, you know, to give some justification as to why they would have to come down and be replaced. Two of those light poles are significantly out of plumb. The one right next to the field house is 6 feet out of plumb from top to bottom. And also on the other side of the field, what's noted as pole number 6 is also out of plumb. If you look through that excerpt of the report, I've highlighted certain deficiencies on the light poles. Besides being out of plumb, the one that's located by the field house is in an area where the grade actually, all the water comes down into that light pole. And that may be some of the reason why it's out of plumb, you know, all that water soaking that area. But they're saying that in order to fix those deficiencies, we would have to repair that grade so that the grade slopes away from that pole instead of towards it. So that would be extremely expensive. That pole also has a pretty big dent in it. And they said that would have to be repaired because that affects the structural integrity of the pole. In order to fix that pole, you would have to take it down anyway. That combined with all the other things in there, I think it's much more advisable to take those poles down and replace it with a 4-pole system.
I don't think any of us wanted to take the poles down, but after listening to our meeting before, to me, I think it has to be. No way around that. But I don't.
Does anybody have any questions?
Why didn't you want to take it down?
Just to say.
Originally, we wanted to hang the LED lights on the existing
Okay.
pole.
But then after talking to them, they wouldn't even do it anyway unless you had somebody.
An engineer would have to sign off on the existing poles.
What's the life of what should be the life of that type of pole?
This type of pole, the life expectancy is 40 to 50 years.
So we've already exceeded it.
Hardware 40 to 50 years. The newer poles are not these pre-rusted poles, they're galvanized poles that at least, if not longer.
Joe, thank you very much. Now, the one thing that was not discussed and that we're still looking into, I know Ray, you met with Pioneer yesterday.
Yes, I
Was
met with
potential-
M.A. Shutter, yeah.
It says storage projected here, for $132,000. We're looking into also providing additional covered storage space under the bleachers, which would currently have a lot of equipment there. So, Ray, do you have any updates on that?
I should have a breakdown for you next week. We met yesterday in the wind out there, in the wind and the snow. He took a look at it. He said he'll put together a sort of a generic ballpark, but he's gonna scope it out. So I'll have something to Joe early next week that'll say, you know, here's based on these dimensions and this type of outfit as far as materials, that we'd be able to slide. And we talked about a couple different options. Prefabricated stuff that we could slide back in there like a sled, to something that's manufactured on site. The only thing that I think we've pretty much ruled out is attaching anything to the existing structure just for liability purposes. But I should have some ballpark pricing and a scope early next week.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
So that line item there may or may not be in effect, so in what extent, we don't know yet. So we're just waiting on that. That was an estimated from a prior proposal. Question? Good.
Matt, if I could add something real quick, I just wanted to mention, I mentioned it earlier informally, we'll have multiple crews here throughout the summer. One of the things that we look for is for housing. If anybody has relatives or yourselves or anybody has Airbnbs that you'd be interested, mention it to Joe or Matt. We'd be interested. We'll probably have a 6-person crew here for roughly 30 days doing the field work, and then a separate 6-person crew for another 30 days doing the track work, just roughly. So for us, it's kind of ideal for our crews to have the access to go back to a house as opposed to the hotel. It is what it is, but I figured I'd throw it out there. If anybody has contacts for one, we'll give them guaranteed business for 2 months.
Sounds good. We'll put the word out. Thank you.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Victoria?
Is any of that renovation going toward the concession stand? I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the closeness we have in there, but is any of it going toward the concession stand?
Well, what we discussed earlier was that get the addition established without the interior finished at this point, so we could figure out how we could best utilize the space inside. So if we have to restructure the way it's currently set up, that we could do so. We just want to make sure that we're using it as efficiently as we can. But that is a concern that we had, was the concession stand for sure, because it is jam-packed.
Close, family.
Yes, it's a tight-knit group behind those walls, but, so that's something that will be discussed moving forward.
Is everybody on the committee on the same page? This one needs to be done.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion, just a little bit from here, months, back and forth. How do you feel about it? It's a concept, I know.
Yeah, that's basically how I feel.
Nice of it from light sweet, you know, getting us
Yeah.
out of holes and that.
Right.
Just try to sit there, but, I mean, straight up from the core.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna surf that, nobody's gonna okay it, right, so it's there, so. then
Adding on to the field is probably the cheapest way to do it.
Right.
So that's pretty expensive.
Better than a new building.
Exactly. So that's what we're trying
Do you
to
have any marketable sale for what lights we have, once we take them down?
It's a good question. I'll ask the question. We actually have the Southeast Regional Sales Manager from Musco. We just hired a couple months ago. I'll give him a call as soon as I leave the office here.
Yeah,
No?
that's great.
Repurpose.
Oh, it's a fancy
purposes, environmental, green, whatever you want.
And the other thing to mention, with the way this is proposed, we still fall within, with the other projects that we've done last year with carpeting at R.D. Wilson, as well as the second story this coming summer at R.D. Wilson. We're still within the $2.5 million that was borrowed last year, 2 years ago. Back in, yeah, thank you. So that's, all of this falls under that.
Oh, R.D. Wilson doesn't need completely recarpeted?
Yes. And we're also looking at some other areas that in high school office, things like that. Those we're still working. No more questions for the stadium renovation project. Ray, thank you so much, we appreciate you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Just one second, real quick. With the sound system there, will that be changed at all, Joe?
We were just discussing that in the committee meeting. That's something that we're gonna have to look into. We've already done some preliminary stuff. The electrical contractor that was there, representing Musco, said that the new sound systems, if we provide the speakers, they'll be more than happy to hang them up there. So we just have to determine how the head end of the system and the press box is, and there's some other changes we'd like to make also.
All right. Ray, again, thank you.
Thank you very
Safe
much,
travels.
appreciate it. Everybody stay warm.
Thank you. Joe, thank you very much, appreciate it. Nice job. Guess we'll do the public before we get to the agenda. Is that one from the public like to speak?
I know I do, but.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Please, ladies first.
Oh, thank you. Well, hi, Laura Russner. I gotta stand up? Do I have to stand up? You guys remember me from December, I think, and I emailed it to all you guys, my little agenda. I just wanted to know if you guys have looked it over and I don't know if you guys discussed at all before tonight. I don't know exactly how this all works, and I apologize. But if you talked about or what you're considering about the fee being covered and also about getting some paid coaches for winter track.
We haven't had formal discussions with the entire board at this point. Mr. Black is still looking into some information for us so that we can have a recommendation to the board as a result, talking to other school districts, see how it's structured, things of that nature. We haven't had that ready for the board at this meeting yet, but it will be in the near future.
Okay.
Hopefully by, there's a quick turnaround between this meeting and our next, with February, this meeting being late, as a result of the holidays. So
Right now, I understand with the holidays and stuff like that, but I'm not sure if I totally understand what you mean with the structuring and stuff.
Just how other districts operate their, if they have a program, what the program looks like in terms of coaching, salary structures, how many coaches they have, just how it operates. So Bob, Mr. Black is looking into some of those details.
Well,
I know he has some information, I know he's spoken to people, but
Okay.
right at this current moment, we don't have a recommendation to the board to discuss.
Okay, but wouldn't the coaching, wouldn't it follow our structure and why would, I don't
Well,
understand.
because it's not currently in the bargaining unit,
Okay,
we don't have that. So that, again, it would have to be in collaboration with the association. And then there would have to be the memorandum of understanding, which basically would adjust the current contract as it is. So that would also have to take place.
It wouldn't mirror our outdoor track as far as the coaching goes? Do you know what I mean? Like the structure, wouldn't it just mirror what we already have in place for the outdoor track and field team?
It may, yes. I mean, the way that the team itself operates is not going to necessarily be different, but just the way it's structured from an administrative standpoint is what we're.
I mean, our concern too is that like, well, it's hard, like, I mean, our kids are all there, but the parents having to pay the $50
well,
or
that's the
some,
next thing.
yeah.
Oh, no, I was gonna say that's the opposite. So, okay, so so for February, the workshop, you guys will have something that that you guys are gonna sit, okay. So come back for February for that?
Well, after, the board hasn't, we really have not had the time to really talk about it
Okay.
either. So I'm hoping that later we can just discuss it and just go over it a little bit more in detail, because as a group, we haven't really even spoke about it, so.
Okay, if you guys want any information, I did sit down and personally I went through all the board meetings, read all the minutes, looked at all the coaches, how many kids for the last 2 years. I even brought up a little chart of ratio of coaches to kids, looking at fall sports, You know, for girls you have 6, for boys you have 4. Winter sports, we have 2 sports for girls, 2 sports for boys. I know girls can be on boys, but just talking about traditionally, what it is and stuff like that, how many kids. So, you know, and I know that you guys have been a very positive board about, you know, looking back and seeing some of the stuff you guys have done, definitely writing some inequities with salaries and retention. I didn't know, I'll tell you the truth, but going back and reading and going through all this, I was like, you guys, awesome. But, but if you need anything from me, I'll read my.
You shared the.
I can share it once, yeah, I just have the one copy
Okay.
and stuff, but I
If you have
can
it.
definitely get it to you.
Yeah, if you have it
Absolutely.
electronically also, you can send it.
Absolutely,
That's
absolutely.
right.
And then and about the fee, I know, I sent that about the fee, and one of the things that was brought up to me, and I didn't think about it, is that I know with indoor track, Justin Collins does go to everybody and say, hey, 'cause some people can't afford. We don't know people's financial status, but we don't know how many kids don't join or shy away because they don't want to show their financial status. Because that's something I know I didn't bring out when I was talking about it. So we don't know how many kids actually don't even show up because they, you know, don't want people to know their own personal stuff. So that's something else, you know, that I hope you guys consider when you look at how much for the fee for the track. You guys post anything?
I do apologize, we don't have more information for you this evening, but definitely hopefully for the next one, we'll be able to discuss it
Okay.
in much more detail.
Okay.
Tonight.
Thank you.
Coach?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Barrett. I wanted to bring up to the board the condition of the wrestling room and a possible rehaul of that facility. It's my understanding that when the middle school was built here and opened in 1991 or 92 is when that wrestling room was built, and it truly hasn't been updated in 30 years. The sidewall matting is coming off the walls. The mats that are down on the ground are truly never put in correctly. With the wrestling background I've had, I've been in hundreds of wrestling rooms, and they're all conformed to the size of the room. So if there's a section of the room or a pole in the middle of the room, the mat's cut and formed around professionally around the mat. The undermatting in the room is, again, 30 years old. And the way that the mat comes up against the walls on the one side now, it was cut, not professionally on the one side. Dirt, grime, debris gets under there. I don't know if anybody is familiar with it, but it breeds anywhere from ringworm, staph, MRSA. Any of this stuff could grow, especially in a humid environment like a wrestling room, which it is by design. What I'm asking is for a rehaul of that room with it's my understanding that the school district took on a loan for the sports teams. In my opinion, I don't think it'll be ultra expensive. It will cost money. It'll serve a couple different purposes. If you put it, I'm not asking for a total new room, I'm just asking for the room to be redone with new mats, new sidewall mats. Maybe right outside of our wrestling room is a group of lockers. If we could revamp those lockers to sit there and put the kids' stuff in it. I don't allow street shoes into that room for obvious reasons. So you can walk around a hallway, who knows what's on the floor. I try to keep it as clean as possible. I spent 8 hours of my own time in there before the season to try to clean it, where we've still had issues. Like I said, it's been 30 years, or approximately 30 years. It being done the correct way, we could get another 20 to 30 years out of that room if it's being maintained properly. The other issue we have with that is I don't know what that room was. My understanding was it was maybe the janitor's area, but there's very little ventilation in there. And with a wrestling room, the heat's up to about 82 to 84 degrees. Small confined space, so you get 20 kids in there, gets humid with no ventilation. Again, breeds nothing but problems. I know there's air purifying systems that literally go on a wall, ionizers and stuff like that, which I've heard work. There's different cleaning products, which the district's been fantastic with whatever I requested. I got for cleaning the mats. Again, if it could be done, which I'm hoping it can be, a company like Resolite, who does wrestling mats, would probably come in and laser measure the whole room with the outgoings and stuff, because it's not a traditional square or rectangle room. To get a perfect fit with the mats. That way, if the mats are flat, the under matting right now it's a piece of rubber, so it's essentially an inch of wrestling mat, which is density foam on concrete. The other thing that I would request is putting a sprung floor in, which is, for that size room, would probably be around $3,000 to $3,500, which is essentially just plywood with foam blocks strategically put in and then put in a room, which will cut down mainly on injury. So if any of you guys know anything about gymnastics, like with the floor exercise, that's on a sprung floor. They call it a sprung floor. That cuts down on knee injuries, shoulder injuries. It's not hitting a concrete floor in a mat. It's hitting, you get a little bit more give. So that being said, that's one knee injury would pay for that whole floor in the eyes of the school district. With the room being totally redone and the money that we're gonna, if you guys decide to do this, which I sincerely hope that you do, I would strongly recommend that it gets cleaned at least professionally once a year, if not twice. We were at the Lackawanna League Championships, and there was a email that came out right after that with a wrestler from Lackawanna Trail that contracted MRSA. Now, that's one kid that possibly could have wrestled on 4 mats with hundreds of kids there. That could be a massive outbreak.
Sure. Absolutely. And I know within the last couple of weeks, we did have it professionally cleaned. Mr. Black and Mr. Dunn have been collaborating with our custodial staff to see if there are other measures that we can take in-house to better, more efficiently clean the room. Mr. Black was also looking into new padding for the walls and new mats for the floors. So he's reaching out to get some quotes to see what the cost might be. And then, once we get that information, we can talk to the board and see what direction we want to go in at that point. So we're waiting for him to get some more information on his end. Okay, but